welcome to Financial Footsteps, candid conversations with financial leaders, the podcast that takes you deep into the minds of the masters behind the numbers. Join host Chad Dean as he connects with financial leaders as they share their journeys so that we can gain valuable insight from their failures and triumphs. Get ready for candid conversations, behind-the-scenes anecdotes, and practical wisdom that will transform the way you think about your career in finance. Put down the balance sheet and listen in.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Financial Footsteps, where we explore the background and the careers of financial leaders for the benefit of those that want to follow in their footsteps. I am Chad Dean, your host. I've been a recruiter for 27 years, and I am the owner and CEO of Integrated Management Resources, a Phoenix-based executive recruiting company, and also the sponsor of Financial Footsteps. And I am very excited today to have Adam Miller as a guest. Hello, Adam. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Chad. Thank you.
We were just talking about the Diamondbacks before this, so I got to give a shout since this is right after the Diamondbacks earned a spot into the World Series. So let's go Snakes. Adam already has tickets to the series, so I am super jealous, and I might be jumping on after this, figure out how I can get some myself. Welcome, Adam.
Thank you.
Tell us, let's start with your background as far as where you grew up, what you're doing now, and we'll go from there.
Thanks. I actually grew up on the East Coast. I was born in Connecticut and spent my whole youth and went to school near Boston in Waltham, Massachusetts. It's at Bentley University, and started working back east. And then I moved here in '87, was transferred out, and here, thankfully, with my employer. And I've never left. Love Arizona. I love the weather. It's a beautiful place to live.
You love it more now than you did probably 45 days ago when it was, or even last week when it's still 103 in the middle of October.
It's our winter. We don't have to shovel sunshine, is what they say.
Exactly. You don't have shovel heat. So you, currently, right now, what are you doing?
I am the CFO and Executive Vice President of Barron Lighting Group. It is a commercial lighting company. It's been in business for 50 years. We're celebrating 50 years this year. I haven't been there the whole 50. I've been there about a quarter of the time. But it is based in Glendale, Arizona. And we do actually manufacture products there that are made in the USA. And we also design and distribute all kinds of commercial lighting, emergency lighting, exit lighting, things for people get a lot of rebates for reducing their cost of electricity, and LEDs definitely do that.
Gotcha. So before we get into the whole work side of things and your career and all that, what about family? What do you do for fun?
We actually like to travel a lot. We hike. Unfortunately, I'm not hiking right now. I have a little bit of it's called a IT band issue.
Oh,
So getting that straightened out. But wife and I like to hike either here or we go up to Flagstaff when it's too hot. And we hike up there. We love to travel all over the world. And unfortunately, traveling overseas may not be a great idea right now, but we're looking for our next adventure.
Awesome. So you grew up in Connecticut, which I love Connecticut. And you know what I love about Connecticut is how green it is and how growing up in Phoenix, we are on a grid system for our roads. And in Connecticut, they go wherever they felt like going and around creeks and in between hills. And I think it's so beautiful there.
Well, here in Arizona, when you get directions that go east-west, you can do that on the grid. Left-right.
Yeah.
Because you don't really know what direction you're because streets go in circles. So it's interesting.
So you went to Bentley College and you got a degree in?
Accounting.
Accounting. Very rare these days, but very more common when you're going to school?
It was. It was an interesting journey getting into accounting. When I was a junior in high school, the counselor asked me what I was interested in for college. And I said, I like business. I want to make money. And I'm really good with numbers. Math was a hobby. And he said, well, try accounting. So my senior year, I actually took a bookkeeping course, like a freshman bookkeeping course in high school. And I loved it. I just, like a fish to water, I said, this is easy. I get it. And some people get accounting, some people don't. It doesn't have anything to do with intelligence. It just has to do with your brain wired to understand it. And so then I applied to business schools back east and got into Bentley. and did that. And I really had no idea what I was getting into. I just knew I liked numbers. I liked dealing with money, business. I started working when I was like 13, being a dishwasher, and always knew I had to provide for myself. So I told my counselor, I said, I want a career that I can be a professional, but unfortunately, I can only afford 4 years of school. I just don't know if I can. I said, I have to be able to graduate in 4 years and get a professional job. And that's why he sort of pointed me toward accounting.
Well, that very fortuitous to have that particular advisor, right?
Yes, yes. Well, I had to take one class to graduate my senior year in high school. So he made sure I took the English class in sixth period so I couldn't goof off and get in trouble my senior year. So I filled it up with all other, like the accounting class and some other classes, just electives to keep myself busy until sixth period. So I was not happy about that, but it worked out well.
I remember when I took an accounting class my freshman year of college, and I had zero interest in it. I was like, I'm just taking this because I have to. I ended up so you say it clicks with some and it doesn't with others. For whatever reason, it clicked with me. Balance sheets, income statements, all that just came so naturally to me. It was the easiest A I got, and I was so glad when I got done that I took the class because I think it probably was the only A I got my freshman year of college. I was having a really good time. So
Yeah, I had a great first professor. I think we were his first class he was teaching at Bentley. And he was really good. And by the time I got to my senior year, he was now teaching senior classes. So he was teaching an auditing class. And a lot of us in that class had been interviewing already with a lot of the big firms. You either go public or you go private. So you had those. And I actually took an internship in private. And I saw what that was. I said, I'm going to go to a public because I don't think I want to grow up in that environment. I want to be doing different things. So I took a job as an auditor in public accounting firms. So I'm sitting in this class all comfortable, and teacher says, well, how many of you have taken jobs with, big firms being auditors? Everyone raises their hand. How many people know what auditing is? Why'd you take a job? Because you haven't even had the class yet. Don't even know what you're going to be doing. Because we thought we were supposed to. We followed the path. They said, this is the path you should take.
mhm.
So it's either audit, taxes, public, private. And so I said, well, audit, public, that's what I'll do. So I got a job. Everybody was a little shocked that I got a job where I did. So it was fun. I had not as long hair as I have now, but I was a lifeguard, tan all the time, long hair, just a hangout guy. And they're like, you got into Arthur Andersen? So I interviewed and got a job with Arthur Andersen out of school. That was my first job.
Yeah. What did the accounting people think of the finance people back then?
We didn't understand what they were really doing. They were good partiers. All the finance people I knew were just really off the hook. And they seemed to be having a really good time. And us accountants were just like, oh, I'm going to study for this course. They were always happy. But now I understand. I think that, I probably would have added more finance classes into my college career if I had known what finance was really about. And again, it wasn't, I started off in the accounting path. When you're young, people give you a recommendation. You see a bunch of other people doing it. You think you're doing the right thing. And you could be, not right or wrong. But you look back and you say, now I understand what those guys are doing and why they call it finance versus accounting. We thought they all wanted to go work at a bank or something like that, and just, be a bank teller and count money. It's a lot more to it than that.
Right. So you get into Arthur Anderson and you looked around. Were you where you were supposed to be?
Yes. I did pick the last start date so I can be a lifeguard for that summer. It was my last summer as a lifeguard, and we were young kids, and we had a police car and a motorboat, and we had a lot of fun being a lifeguard. So I took like an October start date. So I was one of the last new hires to come in, and but I got there and I said, yeah, this is where I need to be. It was a awakening experience because you're dealing with a lot of A+ high achiever personalities, and it's all get it done now, and it's a lot of process, a lot of discipline, a lot of training. It was great. It was an awesome first job.
Did you slide right in? Did you fit in with that crowd as far as being that type A personality?
Yeah, I did work hard and I did do a lot of the things, but one of the things that I learned because I'd been working for so long is a lot of the people who came in, this was their first job, and they did what they were told, basically. And, when you come in and you're a new person, there's some hazing that goes on, maybe. They sort of chuckle at everything like that. And I didn't really accept it very much. There was a time when it was Friday afternoon and I was available. I told everybody all the senior people, I'm available if you need help, blah, blah, blah. And I had a trip planned to leave. I had to leave at 5 to whatever, go on a trip. So at 4:45, guy comes over with a big pile. He says, "Hey, I need these copied. They need to be done. And, if you don't get them done today, come in tomorrow." But I said, "I told you I was available all day. They were sitting on your desk all day, and you wait till 4:45. I said, "I'm leaving at 5. Give it to somebody else." And he didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
And I had a backbone, and that wasn't really understood to some of these people. And, I did have some good mentors there who helped me through that. Obviously, work hard and do what's asked of you. But this kind of playing around and hazing, I didn't accept it.
Wow. So you bucked the trend.
Oh, yeah. And, he went and complained, and then he got a little bit, I think he was told, don't ever do that again. And from that point on, I never had a problem, and I got all kinds of great job opportunities within Anderson, the jobs you want to be on to work on, because I did work hard, but I was very direct and not a very, I didn't play games.
Mm-hmm. So what did you learn from business, or what sticks out in your mind as far as what you learned most from that first job?
I was there for a long time. I started out as an auditor, and then I became a forensic accountant. And I was an expert witness. It turned into being an expert witness in litigation, doing business valuation and everything. So I sort of went off into specialty services. Because when I was in auditing for 3 or 4 years and I made senior and I was working with the manager, and he said, "Hey, now you know the whole cycle of auditing. So this is everything we do." I said, "There's nothing else?" He said, "Well, once a new pronouncement comes out, we have to know what it is and everything like that." I said, "This is great. Thank you very much for the education. I'm going to do something else because I just couldn't live in that world forever." There are people that can, and it's awesome. They do a great job. I'm not that guy. I'm not the guy that do journal entries every week. I'm not the guy to just do the same thing every month. That's not me. There is a need for that, and it's a great need. If you can do that and be happy and be accurate and on time,
super important.
that is a great attribute to have. I can do it. I wouldn't be happy doing it. So I've learned what makes me happy and what doesn't make me happy. Just because I can do it doesn't mean I have to do it. Do what you're comfortable in. So when I slid into this role, I'm much more operational. Yeah, I'm in charge of accounting, but I'm also in charge of purchasing, production, the warehouse, IT department, the returns department. They all report up to me. All the operational things report up to me. To me, that's fun. I mean, I'm juggling all these balls all day. That's a world I live in and I'm comfortable in. I'm very uncomfortable if everything's very quiet.
Right.
And I've learned that about myself, and I've accepted it. And I accept what my positives are and then things I can't do. And I hire people to do the things I can't do. And I tell them, "You're going to be the master at this, not me. I'm hiring you because of this, because I don't do it well." Knowing what you don't do well and knowing what you do well, that's very important. And like I said, I learned if I can do it, that doesn't mean I have to.
Right.
So when I was young, going in the auditing track, you're following everyone else's lead. And that's okay. That's great. You're doing something to move forward. But right now, if I meet a young person who's thinking about going to school, not going to, let's say they don't want to go to school right away, I tell them, get into sales. Do something in the sales function so you'll learn about the company. It's a great occupation. When you're ready, if you want business, go to business and do that. But the sales background will help you tremendously. And I'm a pro sales CFO. I work very well with the sales department. We work together. My equivalent, who works with all the sales functions and marketing and engineering, we work very well together. It's a great combination.
Well, if you can survive sales and get punched in the mouth every day and lose all your teeth and come back the next day and ask for more, that's a strong skill.
Yeah, you get used to the word no a lot, and you just don't stop. And if it doesn't bother you, just keep going forward. And that is a learned behavior. That's not something people are born with. They sort of have to learn that a no is okay because there's a yes coming down the road somewhere.
Yep.
Somewhere.
So a lot of the audience listening to this probably read the white paper on Arthur Andersen, but were you there during the Enron scandal and all that?
Yes. I actually worked for Anderson for my first 8 years, left, went into industry, actually went into ERP consulting. And then after I left that, Anderson recruited me back in 1999. So I rejoined Arthur Anderson in 99. I left in like 93. So I was there, and it was a very different firm that I left because Anderson was always very structured and very disciplined. And there were high expectations on everybody. And when you took that job, you knew those expectations. No one had to tell you they had to work hard, they had to do X, Y, Z. Very different when I came back. Hard to find people. They started recruiting finance majors instead of accounting majors, and anybody who has a related major. And it was more people centric than it ever was. Like I had my old Anderson traits, and I was doing a great job. I can get it done. But as my partner said, you're leaving dead bodies in the hallway, man. These people don't know how to deal with you because this is a different firm. And it was correct in dealing better with the people. But it was just hard to adjust to. And that's where we started learning that, the softer skills and a better approach. And one of the partners who counseled me said, listen, might not be great at everything. Just make it a neutral. Just make it so it doesn't hurt you. If you're not great at building a pyramid, just sort of step back and have other people help you build it. But don't take charge and say, I'm going to build a pyramid. You know what it is. You know what you're good at. You know what you're not. Things you're not good at, make it a neutral. Just don't make it count against you. And it was great advice because I use that today to people. Say, listen, we're not all good at everything. Just don't be bad at it. Or don't step in something you don't want to step into.
Well, I think we should do just one spin-off podcast and just talk about the whole Enron thing and that whole, because that's a whole story in itself.
Earlier, before it all hit the press and everything like that, we have availability sometimes, and there was a big project that I could have been put on, and I was available, and one of the partners said, "No, he can't go. We need him here," and I'm like, I sort of looked at scans at it, and so I said, okay, you're the partner. That's great. And I did get out of the work. Well, I found out that the job was Enron, and he didn't want to send me down there.
He knew it was.
I don't know if he knew it was
dead end.
If he really wanted me, or if he knew that there was some stuff going on there that they didn't want to be part of. Don't know. But it was tough. It was a hard thing to do. But it was a great organization. It's a shame that what happened to it did happen to it. But it was fun at the end. We can do a whole spinoff of, we were sold. I mean, you had to wait till your group was sold to figure out where you're going. It was like an auction. It was amazing.
So I see KPMG. Is that where you went?
From Anderson, went to KPMG, stayed there for 18 months, and they said, go find somewhere else to go because we're specialty service. So if we work for a client, they can't do audits for them. It is like a service that is very sensitive to that. So we didn't always mix with a firm. So when we're going to KPMG, we're like, why are we going from one accounting firm to the other? Because you have conflict issues. If they're not a client, we can't do certain work. And once we do work for somebody, you can't take them as an audit client because of the attest function and the independence issues. So after 18 months, they said, yeah, it's more of an issue than we thought. We are seeing a lot of conflicts. We're going to have to, spin off. And we went to FTI, bought our practice. That was another transition. It was fun. Good organization. They focused on what we did. There was no audit. And the conflict issue was solved. And they did a great job. It was very interesting, the different firms and how they dealt with people and how they dealt with the onboarding. And then from FTI, I went back in an industry.
And that was with Clifton Gunderson?
FTI, after that, I went to Scott Homes.
Scott Communities.
Scott Communities. It's a local home builder here in Arizona, owned by Steve Robeson of the Robeson family. And he has a single-family residence, and he also had a multifamily arm. So I joined that, and that was very interesting. That's the first time I actually had an interview for actually a director of finance job. And I had an interview for it, and it was very interesting. So it was fun. I loved home building. I loved the organization. The people were great. I was there from 2004, which is when it was sort of limping along. And I left in 2008 after the big bubble and then the big, everyone overbuilding caused the market to have a little problem. And but it was a great ride, fun ride. I loved that experience. Learned a lot. So it was a good time.
You started doing the finance work. Did that come easy to you?
Yeah. It
Yeah.
was, I did a lot of financial modeling, and we had all these different communities, and I had to work with the banks on our borrowing base to make sure we have the collateral. And then you do a request for money, and you have to show them where you are. And each house is its own little project, and you had to sort of bring all that together into one big cash flow statement. Say, how much cash do we need? What do we need? And take down from the bank and things like that. So it was very fun. It was a great experience. Did a lot of more IT computer work there, learning how to get information out of different systems. I think they used JD Edwards at the time. We're very fortunate to be associated with Robeson because they had a lot of resources we could use. It made life a lot easier. And like I said, it was a great organization. It was a really fun time. But I also became the authorized signer, and when you have to sign all contracts, you get that big pile of paper on your desk, and you've got like a day to get through them. And it's
Yeah.
a real. You can't electronically sign at that time. It was a real signature needed. Now DocuSign has made things, or all these other packages made things a little easier. But back then we were pen to paper, and there's like 15 forms in every folder you had to sign. It's just that's when I decided I never want to have to sign checks, documents, or anything like that. So automating process was top of my list
There you go.
to get things done.
So it sounded like that job was really good training for a CFO title.
It was. It was really good. A good training background. Like I said, we had a lot of the resources of Robeson. They had great people who can guide you through what you need to do, and very gently. And it was really good. But it also reinforced one of the things I always say: cash is king. You can't live without cash. That's your bloodline. That's your lifeline. All these entries to do allocations and revenue recognition and all that stuff. It's important for the regulatory boards and SEC and things like that. But for a company to live, you need cash. And you better understand where it comes from and where it goes. If you don't understand that, you can really, really find some bumps in the road that you can't get over.
That's the name of our podcast. Cash is king. So tell me about your first experience managing people. How was that? And what do you wish you knew beforehand?
I wish I had better people skills. I had great technical skills, and I had great drive to get things done. I'd work 24 hours straight if I had to get it done. I had that inherent in me. And I think I expected everybody else to do the same thing. And I really didn't know how to criticize somebody without hurting their feelings.
Leaving dead bodies in the hallway.
Oh, yeah. There was super intelligent people working there. And, just because I knew how to get from A to B, it was different. We were a specialty service. It's not a book on what to do. You have to figure it out. And I'm really good at figuring it out. And I figured it out and said, here's what you do. Give them a 5-minute explanation. I was done. They're ready to go. I gave them a listed question, a listed task. Do it. They did, but they didn't do it the way I would have done it or what I really wanted. So I learned I don't explain myself very well. If I know something very well, I have to really slow down and just assume the person knows nothing about it and explain it that way and make sure you're on the same level with that person to find out what the level of expertise is before you set your expectations of how well they're going to do. And the other thing that I did is I gave them the deadline. I never asked them how long they thought it would take to do it. So there's a lot of pressure in their mind. It's like, oh my God, there's 10 things I have to do and I've got 4 hours. Well, how am I going to get it all done? Versus, okay, take a look at this. How long do you think it's going to take you to do, and get them to commit to a deadline? If that works, great. If not, then, hey, okay, maybe there's too many tasks. Let's go ahead and figure it out. Or get halfway done and we'll see how you're doing and then we'll figure it out from there. Didn't know any of that. I just knew it had to get done. The partner wanted it the next day and get to it. I was not people-centric. I was task-driven. Yeah, and those dead bodies were just laying in the hallways, and it was unfortunate, but you learn from it.
It's a good learning experience and a good realization once you learn what you really are and how you act and because you and I are wired exactly the same. When I'm training people, I'm like, here's what you do, boom, 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 boom. Now go do it. And I'm like, well, why can't you do it? So, yeah, we're wired very much the same. And I'm still working on that to this day. So
Yeah.
it's
It doesn't go away.
a work in progress.
But you tell people that's say, listen, this is how I am. This is how I speak. And if things are whatever, if I seem a little bit direct, raise your hand or use a code word or something like that. If it's getting to the point where, whoa, what's going on? Because to tell people and be honest what you're good at, what you're not good at, and how it works. And I think you can have much better working relationship that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So tell us about your interview for your first leadership title. Did you, how did you prepare? How did the whole thing go for you?
It was a whirlwind. It was held in I don't know if it was a hotel lobby lounge or a sort of a bar setting. And it was at the end of the day, and my days are just they're frantic. I mean, you're busy. I think I started work at 6 that morning, and I'm meeting this guy at like 6 p.m. and I'm in the middle of my day. I know I have probably to go back to work and finish something. So I sat with this guy, and basically, he said, "You've never been in this position before." First thing he asked me, he said, "Can you get loans from banks?" I said, "I can do that." He said, "Have you done it?" I said, "No." I said, "But I know I can." I said, "I've gotten a letter of credit." I said, "I know what the banks want. I know that they want to lend you money as long as you can realistically justify it." I said, "And I'm really good at working with that level of people." I said, "I know I can do it." I said, I'm not going to tell you I did it 50 times because I haven't, but I know I can." So that was it was like being brutally honest, saying, I know I can do it, but I've never have. Some people might say, well, I've gotten loans before. I've got plenty of loans. I got car loans, house loans, whatever. It's not the same dealing with a bank in a commercial setting. So it's again, I think at that point, I was starting to realize who I was professionally. And it was very interesting. I mean, sort of looked at me like, almost like he expected me to stretch it because I'm getting an interview. I really want the job. I basically said, here I am. This is what I do. I'm really good at this. If you want me, great. If not, I'll just keep moving down the road. And but he hired me, and I did it. And I did what he wanted to do at the banks. His ROI was infinite because we were using the bank's money to do everything. So it was great.
So you might have touched upon it. Obviously, when I am prepping people for an interview, I'm like, honesty is 100% the most important thing, because if they ask you a question and say, have you done a loan with a bank before? And you say yes, and they break into that secondary question on that, and you can't answer, you're dead. So no, never have. No, but I can, right? So that's great advice. But what other advice would you give to somebody that's interviewing for their first leadership type role? Or let's call it an executive level role.
Like I said, I know myself, so make sure you know who you are. Research as much as you can about the organization, the company. If this is your first interview, it's intro, if you're in an interview process, I think the expectation is a little bit about the company, and you can understand, because when I'm in an interview, I ask people, so what do you think of our product line? What do you think we're going to do to be better? And if I get a blank stare that they haven't looked at our website, that to me is a problem. Because if you're actually interviewing for a higher level executive or VP or director position, I think there's some expectation that you're going to take the initiative and really look at the company you're interviewing with and say, do I even want to interview with them? Because at that point, at that level, it's a conversation. You're not going to have your standard interview questions. You better be able to talk to those people, look them in the eye, portray who you are, what you're comfortable with, and make sure they know what that is. And if that fits with the job, great. You'll be a good placement. If it doesn't, you don't have to go down a path that might be not so much fun for a few years until you decide to go do something else. So I think it's making sure you know who you are, what your limitations are, but do research on the company. Make sure you know who you're talking to. LinkedIn is great if they're on there. If no one's on LinkedIn, I want to say, why? Ask them, why isn't anyone on LinkedIn? I couldn't find you guys. And there's companies that don't allow their people to be on LinkedIn.
Really?
For security reasons, yeah. And they tell people to take all the profiles down and get off. because, they're worried about XYZ. So definitely know who you're interviewing, who they are, what their backgrounds are. And then they ask questions, as you said, answer them honestly. If you don't understand the question, say, I don't understand your question. I have asked questions that don't make sense to interviewees in an interview to see if they'll say, I don't know what you're asking me, versus trying to make something up and trying to, they're like, oh, sorry, I asked that question wrong, whatever. You see, sometimes how you react to a question is much more important than the answer you're going to give. And if you don't know it, say, at this time, I don't know that, but I can go find out. Or that's not something I understand. What is this? Can you tell me about it? One of the things I look for now that I didn't look for earlier in my career when I was interviewing people, I look for people hardworking, sort of the aspects that you're looking for. If it's an accounting role or something like that, detail, all that stuff, that'll make them good. But I also now wouldn't hire somebody necessarily for a leadership role unless they had great curiosity. If they're not curious about things, like I said, they should be looking at our website. They should be looking at things, because in our industry, you have to move fast. And if you're not curious about what's going on in the industry, you're going to be 5 years behind before you know it. You have to be just incredibly curious about how things work, where things are going, everything. You always have to be questioning. If you're not that type of person, you're starting to sit back and say, status quo is good. I'm just going to sort of manage the process. And there's companies that want that, but not here. You have to be curious, and you have to be honest. If you don't have those two traits, it's not going to work.
You said one of the most important things and I ask every guest along these lines, same line of questioning. What you said, as far as you ask a question where it doesn't necessarily make sense and you want to see how people react. I coach people that if somebody asks you a question, you don't understand the question, or you just don't feel really comfortable with it. I coach them to say, can you please ask me that question in a different way?
Yeah.
And that way you're getting a better understanding, because it puts the onus on the question asker that goes, oh, wait, maybe I didn't make sense. And then they explain more to you and they give you better. And then you can answer, because as soon as you start answering with the wrong answer, the person that asked the question stops listening to you. And they're just like, she's not answering what I was looking for. So that's that advice is gold right there. So that's huge.
Unfortunately, one time I was late for an interview. I was interviewing somebody else for a position in our purchasing department. So during the interview, I walked in. I apologize. I just couldn't get out the phone. It was not good to be late. It's terrible to be late, but I had to be. And he said, I said, what are your pet peeves? And he sat there. He said, people not being on time. I'm like, I get it. And just, you're looking at that, and he's got that. He knows that he's probably putting his interview at risk because I'm the guy hiring him. But he was right. I mean, everybody knows you should be on time.
Right.
And if your peeve is people not on time, say it. He was honest. And I think he was saying it, and he knew he was honest, saying his truth. He felt good about saying his truth. But then he watched and was like, uh-oh, what did I just do? We just continued the interview. It wasn't, he could tell he was fine. It was true. I said, you're right. I like that answer.
Did you hire him?
Yes.
Nice.
Still there.
That's fantastic. So can you think of important moves or circumstances that occurred in your background that you feel really propelled you to the CFO title quicker? Or alternatively, is there anything that you feel hindered your progression?
Anderson definitely prepares you through the audit. You learn all the functions. That's awesome. Learning, I forgot what the name. Learning how transactions flow through a system was key for the financial. In other words, I think it was called Financial Information Systems for Accounting or something like that. It was a very hard course. That was probably my lowest grade because the guy was really super intelligent and he was an awesome teacher, but it was hard. I mean, it was really a hard course. But learning that the transaction processing was very key for me because at Anderson, that's how they started going through their their audit work. It was all, I knew it. I was just trained in it for 4 years. But in the forensic accounting, knowing how things flow, knowing how revenue is generated, how it's billed, how it's collected, how it's applied, and the same thing with payables, how POs are created, knowing all that when you go into a new environment, it makes it much easier. Because if you say, I know what I need to learn, if I can learn these things, I know how the company runs. Once I know how the company runs, I can start giving some input, or at least being a part of the solution, and hopefully solving the problems that start coming about.
Mm-hmm. You said audit is so important, and you learned, and it was a good track for you. There's no everybody knows that there's a shortage of accountants these days. More students are taking finance than accounting. Why? Do you have any idea why that might be?
I think finance gets a lot more attention in the press, if you will. It seems to be a sexier version of business than accounting. I think accounting has an aura about it that it's, green eye shades and dark rooms and long hours, and you do the same thing every month, and you do blah, 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 blah. But I think that whether someone now picks a finance degree or an accounting degree, if they learn the skills they need to have, it doesn't matter what's on the degree. And that's what, like I said, when I went back to Arthur Andersen the second time, that was a lesson I learned, is that, these people are just as smart as we are, and they understand. They just need a little bit more training on what we're training. If it was something having to do with GAAP or auditing or accounting, we probably have to give them a little bit more help. But they can do all the work that we can do, and they have more knowledge in certain things than we do. So understanding what that was. But I think I would say, for somebody, if they want finance, just make sure you get enough accounting courses to understand what the other people are doing, and whether they're going to drive you crazy when you get into your position. The controllers like, you can't do that. I need it over here. And like, what does it matter? 1 box or 2 boxes? Who cares? No, it's important. Well, that's how you have to meld the two to make sure you understand what the other one does. And I say the same thing for accounting people. If I were to go back, I'd probably take more finance courses and more computer courses. I had intro to computers. We were still using, I think it was one of the first IBM desktops, and it had 2 floppy drives in the computer room,
Hey,
because no one had computers in there.
Floppy drives.
2 floppy
That's
drives.
an
Yep.
upgrade.
So I knew how to use a computer, and at Anderson, I taught myself how to use Lotus. Became an expert in Lotus, and that really carried me through to my forensic accounting, because I said, if you're good at computers, we can use you for a case. And that's how I got in. So I learned that and had the skill necessary to get into a group I was a low level. I was a staff or senior accountant at the time, to get into a group who needed that skill. They didn't care who I was. They said, if you can use Lotus, you know how to do all these things. I just said, yeah, I'm great at it. And they're like, wow, you're awesome at this. So they said, hey, we need you for all the other. Then they started using me in more jobs. And that's how I got into forensic accounting, just because I had a skill that they needed, because I liked it. I mean, that to me was fun.
Mm-hmm. How does somebody coming from forensic accounting audit get that first title of, what was it, finance director for Scott Communities?
Well, my first CFO was job with Signature Technology Group. And it's a very interesting story, because I was their expert witness in litigation that one of the former an owner had with the other owner,
Mm-hmm.
and he won the litigation. And because I knew so much about the company, how everything worked, he turned to me after he basically won the company in the litigation. He turned to me and said, hey, want to be my CFO? I'm like, sure, let's do it. So I was the expert witness in this litigation. And he said, I want you to be my CFO. He said, because you know more about this company than anyone right now, based on all the work you've done. It was a lot of work. Unfortunately for him, it was expensive.
Right.
But it was my education. So when I stepped into that company, I knew how it ran. I knew what it was. I knew the transaction flow. So I could sort of step in and do that. But then I went back into public accounting, and I went through the interview that I told you in the hotel lobby to get my first real executive job. It was a natural fit for me to do that first one. It was fun. Again, learning a lot and learning through all those things. It was, when you're in that position, people look at you as the answer. It is important to be able to give people facts, figures, certain things that you're expected to know. and know them. How much cash you have in the bank? How many days does it take to collect? How many, how are our payables? Who needs money? When is our money coming in from our contracts? What day do they usually hit the bank? Knowing all those things, like the back of your hand, you have to, because they expect you to answer those questions. Because again, that's where you learn cash is king. And it was really a basic business that had monthly contracts, monthly checks came in, and we did some hourly work where we billed it and got those in. That was sort of extra stuff. But you had to know how the business ran, the heartbeat of the business. I think I had one staff accountant at the end and a sort of a assistant who helped me with all the deposits and things like that. It was interesting to get into that role and be the guy. And it really taught me that, there are a lot of aspects to a business that you should understand, or at least know exist, before you start moving up into that role. If you don't understand it, better learn it quick. And there are things I had to learn there. There are things I had to learn at my current job that I didn't know about. And when I took my current job, I thought I'd be up to speed in a couple months. I thought it took me about a year to really be contributing to the organization. So when I hire somebody, I tell them, listen, you have to adjust your expectations because we are very different. We have a lot of moving parts, a lot of things going on at one time. We're a small company growing rapidly. I said, so your expectation, I said, to get up to speed where you are functioning at a high level is going to take a lot longer than you think, just because of how we work. So it's interesting to give people the expectation to see what it is.
So did you go into Barron as with the CFO,
Yes,
taking the CFO title?
I was their first CFO. They
Really?
had never had one before.
So tell me about that, the interview process, and was it smooth, or
The
how'd that go?
interview process itself was great. I did a phone interview with the founder, and he brought me in. And actually, what happened is I was working at Clifton. Now it's Clifton Larson. Now it's Clifton Anderson. The area that I was in, the work just wasn't there. They let me go. I was the last hired, so I was the first one go. So I was unemployed.
Is that the first time ever?
First time since I was 13, I wasn't working.
Whoa.
It was weird, but it was really good for me because I was one of those guys saying, I'm never going to retire. I'm never going to retire. I can retire because I was busier in that 7 months with, looking for a job, but also all the stuff that you can do in life that you probably should be doing if you're working 18 hours a day. So I think it helped me a lot more with my balance of life and work and be able to separate that because I had that 7 months where, I should be doing all these things all the time, but I ignore it because, work is important. So it was interesting. So the partner who I work for at Clifton Anderson got a call from a banker saying, hey, I got one of my important clients looking for a CFO. You know anybody? And I had met this banker. He said, Adam, I think is still out there. He's looking for a position. So he sent the resume, got it to the founder, phone interviewed me. I came in. I met with the owners and the founder, and I just felt the vibe of the company. And I said, this is a great company. This is awesome. I really want to work here. I just, really excited about it. And it wasn't because, I had plenty of other interviews, but something was different about this company. So I get back and they offered me a position. And I had a recruiter friend. I just didn't know what to do because it wasn't even in the ballpark of what a CFO should earn. I said, I really want to work here. I said, I know when I get there, they'll see the value about it. He said, you can't take this job. And at the time, you could still get salary as to where you started, where you ended. And we used to be able to do that in interviews. Now I guess people don't do it or don't want to do it or shouldn't do it. I don't know.
Yeah, you can't ask anymore.
Well, you can ask. Probably not going to answer. It's going to stand any business. So he said, you can't because it won't make sense. He said, you can't take a position at that level. They'll say, what was wrong with you? Why did you go from this salary to half that salary to start? So I had to answer the founder, and he is a great guy, but he has a very deep voice, and he has a very good command. So you're like, how do you answer this guy? So I got a salary survey from a well-known recruiting company and said, listen, I said, I love Barron Lighting. If you guys are really looking for controller level people, I know a lot of people I can help you interview. Here's a salary survey for CFOs. So right now I can't take the position as offered. Thank you so, very polite, but I sent a salary survey. And I talked to he called me up. He said, I got information from our partner CPA firm, and I asked them, and we've never had a CFO before. Let us get back together and get something that would work for you. So they asked me in an interview what was important. What do you want? They said, what's important to you? I said, well, salary's important. I said, I'd like an ownership interest. I said, I'd love to have equity in a company. That's a great goal of mine. And I'd like to do, 3 or 4 other things that told them what was important to me. I was actually told that equity was not on the table. I didn't like the answer, but they were honest. They said, that's not something we're going to do. We'll do all these other things, but it's not going to be equity. I said, okay, I'll try it out. But again, it was what I really liked was their honesty, because I've heard of interviews where people say, I like this. Oh, we can work something out to get there someday. And it never happens. And then as years go on, you get more and more resentful that they're not doing it. At least I said, no, that's not on the table. No plan. Okay. I mean, I have other things that emulate some of that, but you find a way to work around it. And I appreciated that. I didn't like the answers necessarily, but I really appreciated their honesty. I'm still there, so something went right.
13 years, right?
I know people are freaking out. How CFOs don't last that long. And my wife is, this is the longest tenure you've had at any job. She goes, usually 4 or 5 years you get an answer and you want to go do something else. But I think I really found a position that works well for me. I like the people I work with. I like that it's different every day. It's exciting. It's just a vibrant culture. And it's really nice because we're starting to grow up, and it's single owner, but we're hitting that point where we should start catapulting to the next level.
Awesome. All right. So, and I think you've already touched on this, but what would you, if you could go back and talk to your younger self, what would you tell yourself?
If I go back to my senior year in high school, I said I get the knee operation so I can keep playing football. So that would have changed my path dramatically.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing. You look back and say decisions you made and what effect it had. I got a handwritten letter from an Ivy League football coach saying, I understand you're not playing. If there's anything I can do for you, let me know. I had no idea they were looking at me. But I decided not to have a reconstructive surgery on my knee back then because I knew what the recovery was. And honestly, I was never going to be a professional football player, I didn't think. I didn't have the speed, just don't have the physical ability that it really requires to do that. But I could have gone to a college, and a different college, and had a different path. So it's interesting to some of the decisions you make. And then my first job, when I left Anderson the first time, I could have done it better. I could have handled the situation better. I might not have left if I had done something differently, if I just confronted my manager honestly about what I thought was going on, instead of holding it in and resenting them and thinking that, oh, they're putting me in a corner. They don't want me to contribute to the way I can. I should have asked more questions, but I felt I was not being treated fairly or not being recognized for what I do. So I left. They were telling me, here, we needed to do these things, not these things. And I said, okay, I'll do them. I did them. I did them really well. And everyone was really happy. I had a meeting. There's a quarterly report meeting, and everyone's like, this is great. This is awesome. This is great. And I said, yeah, one more thing. What? I'm leaving. Like, what? I said, yeah, I'm going to a local firm, go do more forensic accounting, go back into the main line of the business. And they were shocked. And they shouldn't have been. I should have done it better. I should have told them more about what I was really feeling inside versus just saying, I'm leaving.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that was your manager's fault for not asking you more and diving more into what makes you tick? Or was it your own?
It was my own. My manager
issue.
was actually very good. And as we were going through the things and the plan of things that I needed to do well, it's sort of like, I know myself, I was task driven. Hey, this is what we need from you. This is how you have to do it. He was very good at that. And there was I knew what he wanted, and he would talk to me about anything. He asked me if I had questions, whatever. But what I didn't do is let him know how I felt and how it affected me. And if I had told him that, he probably would have said, hey, listen, this is a temporary thing. This is something we need right now. And in my last year, 6 months after that, there'd be other things for you where you can fulfill that need that you're looking for. So I didn't really share my feelings with him, I just thought that they were crazy for making me do this when I could do so many other things for them. So I probably had a higher opinion of my abilities and where I thought I was necessary versus just being put where I need to be and doing a great job at it, but then telling the people, this is what I really want to do. And there could have been different opportunities for me there if I had been more honest with how it really made me feel.
What an important lesson. That really is, because I, as a manager, am so appreciative when people come to me and they say, this is how I'm feeling. This is what's going on with me. This is where I want to go. I don't know that. I'm so busy in my day to day, and I ask questions, but if you're not honest with your manager, they'll probably never know.
Right.
So that lesson alone is worth its weight in gold to anybody young. Does it take a lot of strength to do that? Is it nerve-wracking? Yes. But guess what? Just practice it with somebody that you know. Script it. I always tell people, script out what you want to say and work with somebody else and say, and role play it and say, this is what I want to say to my manager. And if you say it a couple of times, it'll bring that anxiety down. It's going to be tough.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end, the manager really does appreciate it.
Well, if you make it about yourself and your feelings and what you see, the conversation is much easier because it's not about the person you're talking to. You're like, this is how I'm feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying you did it. I'm just feeling this way. And you can't, how do you argue with somebody how they feel? Now,
Sure.
if you don't say, well, you really shouldn't feel that way, that's not what we're trying to do. Let's go ahead and correct it. And that's usually what comes out.
Mm-hmm.
So it says, I'm feeling really overwhelmed. There's all these projects. Because when I interviewed somebody, I said, listen, how do you feel about having a to-do list that grows every day? It never gets done. It will never be done. You'll have 10 items in the morning. By the time you leave, you have 11 items. And 11 different items maybe, but it's never going to be over. You're never going to be done with many things. How do you feel about that? And some people can't deal with it. They want to check the task off and get it done and move on to the next thing. They don't want to keep adding to it. And there's constant things that are in the air in process. If you can't deal with that, it's probably not the right environment for you. And that's okay. Because there are plenty of environments that need people who are task-driven, who have that sense of accomplishment, and there's cultures that can live with that. Not at our company, you can't.
Mm-hmm.
It's much more dynamic than that.
What great advice. I mean, that was key, and that's going to help a lot of people out. So I appreciate you sharing that. And it's hard to believe, but our time is up.
Wow.
That was an hour. It just flies by when you're having fun, and you've got so much to share, and I'm sure you have more to share. And if somebody that's listening to our podcast wants to reach out to you to maybe ask you a question or something like that, how would they find you?
Probably just send me an email. I'll give you my work email, if that's okay.
Please.
Adam.miller@Barron, BarronLTG.com. And they can send me a message, and then I'd be very happy to answer it and just reference the show. And I know who you are because, unfortunately, like you, and I wake up with hundreds of emails in my box, and I found a method to get working faster. But definitely loved answering your questions, and thank you very much for having me on the show. It was really enjoyable.
Absolutely. And also, you are on LinkedIn, as am I. And so if anybody wants to reach out to me, I'm very available on LinkedIn. As a recruiter, I live on LinkedIn, for better or worse. And but I am also, if you just Google me, Chad Dean, Integrated Management, I come up #1 on there. And again, thank you very much, Adam, for spending the time and sharing your wisdom with our audience. And it was very special. So thank you.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Financial Footsteps, Candid Conversations with Financial Leaders. We encourage you to apply the knowledge and wisdom shared in these conversations to your own career. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to our podcast and leave a review. Your feedback is important to us as we continue to bring you more candid conversations and thought-provoking insights from successful financial leaders.